It's Bullseye. I'm Ray Suarez. My first guests this week are Desus Mero, born Daniel Baker and Joel Martinez. The two started working together in podcasting, first as Desus versus Mero, then the Bodega Boys. It's everything that's great about podcasting. It's irreverent, improvised, completely sincere, and totally hilarious. Now, just a few months ago, they've made the jump into TV. Desus Mero is the flagship late-night talk show for the new cable channel Viceland. They get great guests like Rachel Maddow, Fat Joe, Yankees pitcher CC Sabathia. One of the things I really like about the show is the willingness to have a frank and funny conversation about race, even when it comes to sports. This clip is from the episode that aired the Monday after the Super Bowl. And some background if you missed the game. The Patriots' Juliet Edelman made an amazing catch to help turn the tide of the game and give the Patriots another championship. On a show like ESPN SportsCenter, that would have been pretty much it. But Edelman is white, and he plays a position where a lot of players aren't.
Look at this catch. Fam, this is like, summoned all the racism in the world.
Babylon team.
Yeah.
Babylon team. That ball was held in the air by white privilege. Patriarchy. Okay? I'm not falling for the shenanigans.
Yeah,
look at it.
Look at this.
Right there. It's like, what about her emails?
Yeah.
Desus Mero, welcome to Bullseye.
Hey,
thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, buddy. We're here.
The show has been on for not that long, right? Still pretty new.
61 episodes.
61 episodes. Just wrapped 61 today. You know?
Still new, still fun to do, still pretty fresh.
Yeah.
4 nights a week, it's tough. Yes, the world keeps throwing up new things to talk about, but you got to churn it out day after day.
But you know what? We've both had much worse jobs. Yeah. So when people are like, it's tough, I just remember when I used to have to collect dead rats for a living at a Bronx mechanic. Yeah. And I say, you know what? This is actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you set the bar there,
yes.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Like any superheroes, you guys need an origin story. What's yours?
Summer school in the Bronx, man. We briefly cross paths, and then, like, the internet does. It brings you back together years later, and we kind of, like, reconnected on Twitter. And then through talking, we realized that we actually knew each other.
Think of it as a Brokeback Mountain Bronx High School edition, but with the less sex.
Yeah.
But basically, when we first met in, like, summer school, we did not know we would ever like cross paths again, let alone be on TV. But we just we ran in different circles and we knew of each other. I was like, oh, there's that guy there. He was like, oh, that's that guy there. Yep. We're funny on the internet. We talked about the same topic. So generally, if something Bronx related popped up on Twitter, we both have comments on it,
right.
And people really enjoyed the banter there. From there, it went to a podcast went to a TV show. Boom, bang, bing. Now we're on Viceland. We're in your homes 4 nights a week.
So summer school, I guess you guys were such good students, they wanted you there all year round.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Couldn't leave.
Actually, the worst thing in the world actually is going to summer school for gym. I actually went to summer school for chemistry, because I was not good at chemistry. But there's a lot of people that go to summer school for gym, believe it or not.
Also, summer school is one of the few places you're guaranteed to have air conditioning in
True.
New York City. So if you had to go to summer school, it wasn't the worst thing.
Shout out to Lehman High School for actually having air conditioners, because I went to DeWitt Clinton High School and they did not have air conditioners.
Lehman High School
You know
by
what I'm
White Castle. Shout out to the Lehman Lions, my
You know what I
alma
mean?
mater.
Now, Desus, did you say you once picked up dead rats for a job? Did I hear that right?
I've had almost every possible job a person can have in New York City. You can ask Mero. Every day I come up with a new job that I've worked. I've had everything from high-level computer programming jobs doing encryptions for credit card transactions, all the way down to collecting dead rats in a car mechanic on Webster Avenue in the Bronx, across from Twin Parks East projects. Shout out to King Bear. That was the name of the mechanic shop. What happened was an exterminator came through and laid out, they had a huge rat problem. When I say huge rat problem, I mean numerous rats and also very large rats. Large rats that could kind of push Toyota Camry to the side when they were running. And it was the middle of the summer. The exterminator put down rat poison. It was like a warehouse. And so it's 100 degrees. We're in the middle of a heat wave. And there's just this overwhelming stench of dead rats all over the place. And the owner comes out with a compound bucket and a shovel. And he says, you need to find the dead rats around here. And I thought he meant there were 2 or 3. By the end of the day, there were like 8 dead rats. That was me. I got my bucket full of rats, and I went home, and that job aged me 14 years in 1 week.
Now, when you negotiate up front for that, is it by the rat or by the hour? Or
It's
is it like
even. No, here's where I blow your mind. I was not legally supposed to be working that job. That was my father's friend from Jamaica owned that thing. There was no working papers signed. There was like no W-2s. I was working off the books. And at the end of the week, he gave me $60. And I had been working from almost 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and I walked off the job. I was so mad. I was like, I'm never coming back here, which was a huge embarrassment to my father because that showed I did not have the Jamaican work ethic, but I was like, I was not getting paid a fair deal. Turned out that $60 was actually for my bus fare for the next week, but even then, I had too much pride to go back. And I was like, I felt I had more to offer life than just picking up dead rats. And I think me being interviewed at NPR.
I could see the garage owner, saying, what's the matter? You get to work with animals.
I wanted to know what he was doing with the rats because he was like, don't put them in the trash. I have something else for them. So
He was making
I don't know if
fan
he was
belts.
selling them, if he was making furs.
Secondary market.
Yeah.
What did you learn about how to be funny on Twitter or on the podcast? And how does that translate to being funny in front of a camera?
Well, being funny, anyone could be funny on Twitter because you can sit in a dark room and not have to make eye contact with another human.
And you can think about a tweet for 20 minutes.
You can workshop a tweet.
You know what I'm saying?
But to make the jump from being funny on Twitter to being funny on a podcast is one thing. To make the jump from being funny on Twitter to being funny in front of a camera is a whole nother. We're talking the difference between shooting layups in your driveway versus playing basketball on an Olympic level. And that sounds very gas, but what we do, for us, it seems effortless. It seems effortless, but it's like we've been doing it for so long, people forget that you're standing in front of a room full of people who are just sitting there like, all right, make me laugh. You know what I'm saying? Like some mornings you do not have it in you. Some mornings you do not want to crack jokes. You just want to be grumpy and sit there, but you have to make the jokes. You got to make the donuts. And it's easy to do that on Twitter because you can have a bad day. You're not getting paid to tweet, but then to make a podcast and then do the podcast every week and be funny every week and not have a bad episode. And then to add to that 4 shows a week, it takes some time. It takes a while to get into that groove and to have the chemistry we have to try to be funny. Like, not try to be funny, but achieve being funny almost 24/7, it seems like.
It's Bullseye. My guests are Daniel Baker and Joel Martinez. The two host the late-night show Desus Mero. You can check it out now on Viceland. You're working in a genre and in a space that didn't even exist, practically, until you guys were, and along with some others, inventing it. With a media landscape broken up into so many little pieces, what is success? How do you even measure it?
Just making that. I feel like for us, like the success, we feel like we attained success like when we made that jump from like the internet to television. You know what I mean? And then, being now on this deal with Vice, doing a show that we're doing like autonomously, like, yo, this is what we're doing, and it's never like there's never any bickering with like production, like, yo, we're gonna do this, we're not gonna do this. To me, that's success. Autonomy, getting paid an amount of money that you think is worth what you're doing, and then just kind of getting to create on your own terms.
Yeah. Twitter is not, like a lot of people do not get longevity from Twitter or from going viral.
Yeah.
Like, ask, what's her name? The werewolf mom? Was it the Chewbacca mom?
Chewbacca mom.
Like, you can go viral with a hit once, do that again, do that 3 times, do that 4 times. We basically went viral and stayed viral. It's not like we didn't accidentally end up on the Ellen show doing the Nene with Hillary Clinton.
So, do you go in with a plan? You must go in with a plan. There must be a sort of roadmap for the show.
The roadmap for the show is basically is we get there in the morning, me, Desus, and the crew on the show. Shout out to Victor Lopez, he's there, and it's literally we sit around and talk about what we were interested in that happened the night before or is happening right now, and then just kind of distill that into a run of show that we then take and use like arbitrarily. Like we could use stuff on there, we might leave some stuff out, but it really is just coming in the morning, talking to a group of pals about that you're interested in, and then making it into a TV show.
And to call it a run of show it's a bit formal because it's very loose.
Yeah.
It's like they'll basically tell us what assets they have available for whatever story we want to talk about, and there's not necessarily you have to use those assets. There's no point A and point B. It's not like start here and end here.
Yeah.
We talk about whatever. It's up to them to edit it. So we try to leave it loose enough that it can be edited in any way. It doesn't have to follow any. We never say, okay, we're doing a Trump story, this story about kissing polar bears, and this story about a car crash. So it's very loose and it's very free flowing. There's no thought to it, but we just walk in and we just kind of just record for 2 hours, and the show was there. And the idea of research for the show, that's kind of funny because there's almost no facts it's like go with your gut.
Yeah, facts don't matter.
There's been some very clearly I don't say alternate facts. I want to say straight up lies and slander have been stated at times of the show, but it's said with a good heart. So that's why we can't be sued.
Well, I was watching, and you guys were talking about Bob Marley's birthday, and it was apparent to me that this had been a deeply researched subject. Let's take a listen.
Shout out to Bob Marley. He was 72 today.
That's right.
Burn one in his honor. He was killed by the American government. Right. Yes, I said that about other people last week, but it's true for Bob Marley as well. They killed him so that white students at NYU could put a poster of him on the wall, and that's the only reason they killed Bob Marley.
So go to every...
I didn't fully flesh out that theory, but I'm just throwing that out there. Shout out to Bob Marley. He was a beautiful musician, great honor of Jamaica, and now all you guys think of him is a pothead and dirty white kids with dreads. So
I mean, it's the most.
Was that problematic or was that true?
Yeah, it's true.
You spleefing tonight when you're chiefing your keef. You pull out the acoustic guitar, you go on the quad.
Take your shoes off first.
Right, after some hacky sack, and you play One Love.
You know what I'm saying?
I forget, it was some protest in Astor Place. No, what's that? Union Square. And they were doing an acoustic version of One Love, and the whole crowd was singing along, and I was like, this is terrible. I'm Jamaican, break it up.
Now, Desus, I really appreciated that you tried to do a little fact check on the fly. Was that problematic or was that true? You wanted to get down to the bottom of it.
You know what? I want to say that's true for the sake of I have to teach these devils and talk about what's really happening. But no, I feel like that kind of joke, if you're not familiar with our show, you'd hear that and you're like, that's not funny. That's pretty much borderline racist. But once you watch the show, you kind of get the temperature of the show and the tone of the show. You realize that's clearly a joke. Like, I don't really think the U.S. government killed Bob Marley.
Also, Desus is Jamaican, so he thinks that he can just make up facts about Jamaican people, and you have to just accept it.
Who's gonna check us? We have no fact board in Jamaica.
There's no fact board in Jamaica. You don't need that. Ziggy Marley's the Prime Minister of Canada.
Okay.
Fact check that. It doesn't matter. You can't.
But there's a little zing, a little shot to the ribs, a little poke of the finger, with that other stuff about the kids with the dirty feet
and
the bad dreadlocks. And you're dogging my school, but I'll set that aside.
Well, that's actually funny because my parents were the first people to point out to me that who Bob Marley actually is and was in Jamaica and how he's viewed down there, and the vision that Americans have of him is so wild and distorted that joke, it seems like a very throwaway joke, a very hee ha ha. But if you actually look into it, most people do not know anything about Bob Marley other than One Love, weed, and that poster in their dorm room. So that kind of, and then you remember SNL had that skit, what was it, Ras Trent? About the kid, and he was a white kid with dreads, and he had like money from his parents, and he was living at NYU. And that's usually the idea people get when they think of Bob Marley. That's kind of the joke I was going for there. I hope it came across.
And it works. It works. I was binge watching and thinking, I guess everybody can get a kick out of this, or nobody. I'm not sure, but there is no apparent target audience. And if there's anything that's going on in culture right now, it's people sitting around a table trying to figure out the exact demographic profile of who that listener, consumer, viewer is. And you guys are not playing that game at all.
No, not at all.
Nah, we're just doing what we want to do, you know what I mean? And it's actually been a really pleasant surprise that we don't have a very like, yo, this is our demo. You know what I mean? Like,
it's never who you think. You think it's like the 15-year-old kids on the bus listening to hip hop, and it's not. It's the 54-year-old driver on the bus. We have Trump supporters who love it. They're like, you're busting his chops. I love it.
I wish you guys would lay off Trump a little bit, but other than that, I love the show, guys.
Well, you're getting to the bottom of his beautiful relationship with Vladimir Putin, and almost sounding like a serious news show. Let's take a listen.
Yo, America's lying boyfriend, Trumpito, started off this morning with a fuego tweet saying, I don't know Putin, and the haters are going crazy.
Low key.
You know what I'm saying?
Both of those would be incredible hooks for rap songs.
That's true.
Like, I don't know Putin.
I don't know Putin. I don't know Putin. Y'all know Putin. I don't know Putin. Y'all Putin.
Haters go crazy. Haters go crazy. I don't know Putin. They haters go crazy. Haters go crazy, and I don't know Putin, and I don't know Putin, and who do the shooting? And see, look.
Come on, son.
Every Donald Trump tweet could possibly be a wonderful trap song.
You know what I'm saying?
But
also, your man's engaging in whose man's is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, talking about Obama. First of all, get off Barry's
He did the wild shift. He's like, I don't know Putin. I have no deals in Russia. I don't know no named Keisha. The haters is going crazy. But your man Obama, he can make a deal with Iran, which is number one in terror. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
At one point, Desus, you say, people are saying, stop talking about Trump, but we got to keep talking about Trump. Well, he does something interesting every day.
Every day, yeah.
Does.
It got to a point where we were even like, all right, man, like we're talking about Trump a lot, but we're not even digging for stuff. You know what I mean? Like before, like Daily Show had George W. Bush, and he was somewhat a regular politician. Like this guy's a totally different beast. So back then, it was like they had to dig for stuff and talk about policy. This guy is tweeting and making fun of people, and like 90% of the stuff that we get on him about isn't even related to policy. And the guy's just a goofball too. Like he's a reality star. You know what I mean? So I have a very hard time viewing him as anything other than that. You know what I'm saying? So like everything that he does, I'm looking at it like from the lens of this guy used to tell people you're fired on a TV show every night. You know what I mean? Like, and now he is the president of the United States of America.
It's Bullseye. I'm Ray Suarez, in for Jesse Thorn. I'm talking with Desus and Mero. The two created the hit podcasts Desus vs. Mero and the Bodega Boys, and their new talk show debuted on Viceland this past October. The local references. Mm-hmm. When Fat Joe is talking in like total surprise about hearing birds chirp in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I'm laughing my head off because when I was a teenager watching Woody Allen movies,
right,
and there's hardcore New York references, and everybody, I'm sitting in Manhattan, so everybody in the theater would laugh, and I'd be sitting there thinking, how's this going down in Pepper Pike, Ohio?
Right.
Are they laughing at this in Council Bluffs, Iowa?
Right.
I don't know. Do they laugh because they think that something's funny and they kind of get it, but they don't really, but it's kind of funny? Do you even care about that stuff?
No, not at all. I'm personally not at all. And I feel like people use context clues.
I mean, it's comedy you have to work for. There's one level you'll get where it's just like, I'm passively listening to this. This is funny. I get it. And there's some references you don't get. And I think that happens a lot with our podcast and the show. The first couple of times we'll make a reference to something. You're like, I didn't really get that reference. I didn't know you might turn on the closed captioning and you see something. You're just like, I don't know if that was a place or if that's a thing. No need for me to ever Google it or whatever. We might mention it again. And now in your head, you're like, yo, is that a place? Is that a thing? What the hell is a chopped cheese sandwich? So probably by the third or fourth time, you're like, okay, let me Google this so I really understand the references they're making. And therefore, I can get a better appreciation of the humor. We get a lot of people who say, I'll never go to East Tremont. I don't know anything about Houston Street in New York City. But when I listen to your podcast, I feel like I'm on the 2 train. I feel like I'm on the 6 train. I feel like I'm walking through that terrible tunnel that connects the B and the L train. And I think that's another reason people like to listen to us, is because we definitely sound like we're from that New York that people wanted to grow up and move to, not this new gentrified, safe, don't get stabbed in Times Square, New York that exists now, but the little scary New York that used to exist in the beginning of Law and Order when the cop cars were still blue. Yeah. So we give you that rough edge of New York, and you get to listen to it from the safety of your own home in Iowa. And
yet, there are some people who romanticize that old, scary, terrible New York.
Oh yeah,
where
Which is funny because as people who grew up in there, that New York was not fun to live in. I remember as a child looking out the window in the Bronx and seeing constant fires every night back when the whole Bronx was burning thing was happening. And because I was so little and I did not understand, my father was a photographer at the time, so he'd go out and take pictures of the burning buildings. And in my head, I assumed my father was an arsonist and was burning down half the Bronx alone on his own. But I remember in the morning, like the smell of the fire, and we had a German Shepherd, and we'd play in the rubble that a week ago used to be a 6-family apartment building across the street from my house. Like, that was not a fun time to grow up in the Bronx. But when you'll see these stories now, and like they make everything, the early 80s in the Bronx was fun, and we were all breakdancing in the street, and it was not fun. It was a very scary time to deal with and to live through, and you can kind of hear that gruffness in our voices and our stories. And also, I feel like the Bronx is the last borough they're still kind of recovering from that part of its history. So there's still definitely that feeling of the old New York is still, when you talk to New Yorkers in the Bronx, they still have those memories. And there's still a lot of reminders of the old New York. It hasn't really gone anywhere.
Can you see the change, though, finally sticking its fingers up from Upper Manhattan across the Harlem River up into the Bronx now?
Oh yeah, it's pretty terrifying. A little thing
You
called
see
the
that.
Piano District, which was also was called Sobro, which is also originally was South Bronx.
Yeah.
To go there and see like luxury condos and cafes on the street. And sidewalk cafes on the street, and you're like, wow, this is great. Finally, the Bronx is on the rise. But then you see that these same stores and these what looks like opportunities for the Bronx are actually pushing very poor residents out of their own neighborhoods. The real Bronx is going to get washed away in just like overpriced condos and cafes. So you see it, and it kind of breaks your heart. But you can't. It's hard to stop gentrification.
I always felt safe though in the Bronx, man, because like I would always like steel myself like, yo, the Bronx will never get gentrified because of its lack of accessibility to lower Manhattan and blah blah blah, and this because Brooklyn was ripe for the taking, bro, because you could get from Brooklyn downtown in like a blink of an eye, but from like certain parts of the Bronx, man, it takes you forever to get into Manhattan and Brooklyn. So I was always like, man, we're good, we're safe, blah blah blah. But the South Bronx, yeah, they started to kind of like dip their toes in there like that, and I doubled down on my, yo, the Bronx is safe, because I was like, yo, they're starting in the literal worst part of the Bronx. Like, the South Bronx is the part of the Bronx that, like, even people from the Bronx are like, yo, we going to a party over there? You know what I mean? Like, word? Who's going? You know what I mean? Do they have a weapon? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Maybe it's time to lay off that the Bronx is really safe stuff to
You know what I
slow
mean?
this down. Let's talk a little bit about culture, a little bit more about cultural references, because I got a real kick out of you basically taking the audience by the hand and leading them along to something called Héroe Favorito. Let's listen.
Yo, Middle America, understand something.
They got to put the wild dramatic acoustic guitar.
Yeah, that's
on.
right. America, the world is bigger than you, Iowa. I'm sorry. We with you, but we're bigger than you. And there's a lot of people that speak Spanish, and they need their own Drake. Romeo Santos is their Drake. You know what I'm saying?
Who would be the white equivalent of Romeo Santos?
The guy from Dashboard Confessional, probably. Right? So no. What?
Is that Kenny G?
Kenny G.
Kenny G. What's that guy's name?
So that was about Romeo Santos, obviously. Now, a lot of people probably haven't heard of Romeo or his original band Aventura. He's a singer. He's got Puerto Rican and Dominican parents. But when you talk about someone in the show like Romeo Santos, you're taking a lot of the audience someplace new, but you're kind of using the familiar to do it.
Yo, for sure, man. Listen, Jeff Sessions just got, activated as the evil leader, attorney general, and he's very anti-Dominican, and I'm the antithesis of that. You know what I mean? I'm very pro-Dominican. I'm very proud of my roots. I'm very proud of my culture, my heritage. So I'm blowing the trumpet everywhere I go. And I feel like, people, you know what it was? A long time ago, this Italian kid came up to me and he was like, yo, what are you? Are you black? And I was like, I didn't even know what that meant because I'm like 6 years old. I'm like, I'm Dominican. And he was like, what is that? You know what I'm saying? Nobody, and he didn't even know what it was. So I'm like, all right, so I'm going to teach y'all what it is to be Dominican and have this swagger and this, limitless flavor to your whole being.
Wow. Limitless flavor to your whole being.
That's right. That's what we do. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, I mean, like, I think, again,
I'm Puerto Rican. I'm sitting here getting paler as you speak.
Hueva! But you know what it is. As a Puerto Rican, you already know. Like, you bring your culture with you from your motherland, and you want to just put people on. You know what I mean? And if you're from Iowa, you have no idea who Romeo Santos is. Maybe you saw that episode, and then you went and you listened to some early Aventura, and your life has changed now. You know what I mean? And now you went and you bought an acoustic guitar, and you're working on your jams.
When you log on to Viceland, and there's a disclaimer. Now, here's Viceland. Our brand is Edge.
Right.
And even on Viceland, they got to say, the following program does not reflect the opinion of those at Viceland. You think, what are these guys going to say?
What are they going to say?
May contain adult language. Viewer discretion is advised.
But this is my thing. Like, my whole thing off top has been very clear. Like, these disclaimers are for white people because we're gonna say something. We're gonna say something about white people that's gonna ruffle their feathers. Like, nobody really cares if we make fun of, like, if we put a video up of like kids fighting or something like that. People are fake offended by that type of but like offending white people is really like a criminal offense if you're trying to get ad dollars. You know what I'm saying? So like I feel like that's what every disclaimer we have ever used in our entire career has been for
And
that.
it's also good marketing for the show because you might have just literally watched a show about child soldiers running around with AK-47s and Powerpuff Girl book bags. And then our show comes out, they're like, yo, you're about to see something wild. And you're like, yo, I just
Wilder
saw
than that?
how much wilder could what they're about. And then you see it, and at the end of our show, you're like, yeah, that was wild.
That was pretty wild.
That was a lot. Can you show me something safe? Show me that show where they were smuggling gas through the rainforest again. I want to feel a safe space.
You know, I love how white people and the way you talk about them come off as like you guys are in a different country. So you're two Bronx guys sitting in Williamsburg, which, let's face it, once you go out the front doors.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
Peter
they
Peter
are,
restaurants galore.
it's almost the way Margaret Mead talks about people in Samoa. You're talking about white people, like the way they talk and the way they live and the way they dress. And everything else in America, everything else in American, cultural products is geared toward white people.
Yes.
Yeah, because
And
that's the default. That's like America's default is white people. You know
That's
what I mean?
a lot of the controversy and like quote unquote complaints we would get in the beginning of the show were, why do you keep saying white so much? Why do you keep everything out your mouth is white people this, white people that, white people this? And what people don't realize is a large portion of our show rather is it's a othering of white people. For example, on TV, you always see, sometimes even on Viceland, if you see black people, they're on TV with closed captioning, captions, subtitles underneath them, or they're being explained, or they're being studied as this, what do these people do? Like, how do they live? And when you come to our show, it's like, no, we are the default people in our universe.
Yeah.
You guys are the other, and now we're going to study you, and we're going to do to you on this show what you guys do to us on maybe 99% of the other programming on TV. And it's just so jarring for people because people are just like, even quote, I'm gonna use a problematic term here, even good white people, good East Coast liberals, they get offended at the show because they're like, I'm white and I don't do that. Why would you say that? And it's just like,
Bro, if the shit
fam,
don't
if
fit,
it
don't
doesn't
put it
apply
on.
to you, what are you getting upset for?
If it don't apply, let it fly.
Is it that jarring to, and people write, and they're just like, it was my white privilege. I had to check it because I was getting, it was honestly bothering me. It was certain things you were saying were bothering me. And I'm just like, why is this bothering you? And if you take it at face value, it seems just like a lot of cursing and hip hop and two guys from the Bronx. When you actually break it down to like the bone, the bone marrow, it's a pretty intelligent show. We try to be intelligent and talk about smart things in a smart way.
Yeah.
Desus and Mero, it's been fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us. Be sure to catch us on Desus and Mero.
Desus and Mero. You can check out their series on Viceland Monday through Thursday nights at 10 p.m. And you can check out their podcast, The Bodega Boys. Just use your favorite podcast app.